I've recently gone about upgrading my Farker Quarry wagons on my railway, but I haven't updated the stone load, so now it's time to show you how to build a stone load for a wagon. So the current stone loads I have are modelled after the Reverend Audrey's own stone loads that he used in his exhibition layout, which show sort of flat laid large blocks of stone to be transported to Tidmouth. However, I prefer the stone drawings that Clive Sprong did, showing these sort of vertical laid slabs of stone in the wagons. I don't know which is more realistic, but Clive Sprong's slabs of stone look like a more viable product than these sort of weird janky blocks. So I'm going to go with that instead. Now, on my exhibition layout, I like to use a lot of analog, funny, gimmicky functionality, and one of those things is magnets for loads. I like to show the audience that loads will move and come in and out of wagons during the exhibition, such as with these coal wagons. These coal wagons are made so that the coal can be removed when these wagons are placed next to the coal bunker on the sort of operational section of the layout. How it works is that there is metal under the coal in this load. And when I come across it with my magnet on a fishing line, I can pull the load right out in front of the audience, which is really fun. So I want to have part of this functionality for the stone loads. Not that I actually take the stone out in front of the audience. The wagons make their way around to the back seam where I am before I take it out, because that's where the stone goes to. But it will make it easier to take it out of the wagons, because currently I have to do a lot of piddling about with fingers. And the stone actually has to go in a really awkward situation where I can't actually get my hands in to access the carriages. So having some kind of a long reach magnet thing would help me out. So I want to preserve that functionality, make them magnetic. Anyway, cut all the chase, let me show you how to make these stone loads.
So the first thing I'm going to do is measure up the insides of the wagons and then get out my foam. So this stuff is a roofing insulation foam. I got it off a guy on Marketplace a few years ago, and I used it for scenery. I've used it for those coal loads you saw before. I've used this for the stonework on the layout. Conventionally, you'd use some sort of an XPS foam for this sort of deal, but at the time when I was first making the layout, I couldn't find any good XPS in store. Anyway, you'll see that I'm cutting it here using a block of wood to help me get a square cut out of it, which I think is pretty helpful. Using that on all sides is to cut it out. Anyway, this stuff is super useful. The tutorial I'm going to show you on how to make stone out of it comes straight from D&D and tabletop gamers. So lots of good techniques to come out of our friends in the gaming world. They have done a lot of this diorama stuff before. So I've cut out this block, checked that it fits, trimmed it down a little bit before this shot so that it actually fit in there. You can see it's a bit high, and I'll chop the bottom off just using the same technique of getting that wood block up there to get a straight cut. Now that's a better looking height. Next part, I'm going to cut an angle into this. So our reference material had angles on, well, they had the slants on the stone, right? Because I laid on top of each other vertically and they angled back into the carriage. So now that I've created this parallelogram, I can then create the cuts that will make the individual slabs out of this block. So I'm slicing those at a slight angle, the angle of which they're sort of resting on each other, into here, and then I'm going to cut at an angle into the tops of these. So if you think about the fact that they're laid and they're slightly slanted, those tops are going to have to be at 90 degrees to the angle of the back of the stone. So we're creating this sort of stepped stone to represent the backwards leaning angle on them. Anyway, after that I cut down a center line. I want 3 rows of these stone slabs, and to be fair, when I cut this and as I'm doing the narration, I haven't looked at Clive's picture in a while, so I'm not quite sure if that's accurate. Next step, I'm going to put this nail through the center of it. So the nail is what is going to be attracted to the magnet. I'll cut that nail with my trusty bolt cutters and glue it in using some Gorilla Glue, which I know works well with the kind of foam I've selected. And then on top of that nail, I'm going to leave some of the very thin slabs of foam that we've cut off earlier just to cover it up. But I didn't do that on all of the stone loads I made in this batch, and they all worked out without being able to see that nail. You can see here with the magnet test, it gets picked up easily, no issues at all. So that's great. Now, I started this prematurely. I was going to show you how to paint it black, but then, oh god, the horror. I realized I didn't carve the stone down the side of the slab. So this is important because the top of the load will appear out the top of the wagon. So we want to show that the stone slabs actually have a third dimension to them, which is the side dimension. So I'm going to cut that before I paint it up in black. Probably going to cut the video here somewhere, but you know, just want to show you that I cut every single one of them. Isn't that nice of me? Anyway, once that's done, we can refer back to painting black. Now, like weathering, this stone painting technique is something that takes a lot of layers, and some of these layers just get totally covered over by the end of it. The point of this black is that every nook and cranny gets a bit of black in it, which will help to create some shadows once the next layers go on. Next, we want to mix up a kind of cream-ish color, like a nice tan, that we're going to put over this black. Now, it looks really neon and vibrant when it goes on, but it dries quite dark. So don't be too alarmed if you think it looks a bit stupid once it goes on first, because it will dry as almost a grey by the end of it. Anyway, this is the first layer of undercoat that will really set the vibe for the overcoats. Now you go through and pick out all of the bricks in a slightly different color. So I'm going to go with 4 colors. The first one is white, which I'll do maybe 25% of the bricks are going to be white now. Then the next color I go with is a really red sort of tan, so somewhat of a salmon color. I'm going to put the next quarter of the blocks in that color. After that, I go through with a much creamier sort of color, probably what I was aiming for when I first painted over these. Notice how dark that original coat dries as well. So putting on the second coat really helps to make all the colors pop a bit better. The next one I'm going with is pink. So noting that we've got a lot of yellow and red hues in this coat here. Now, we're not going to paint these any other color necessarily, so it might look pretty silly right now, but it won't in a minute, because the next stage will really dilute it down again. So we are going to dry brush on some of that original tan color, which will really just tie all the blocks back in together and will make their individual colors pop underneath this tone. The next step is then to dry brush in white, and you want to be a bit more heavy-handed with this. It's not necessarily dry, it's just dry-ish brushing, and this white will really capture all of the raised details on the stone, and again we'll tie them all together so that it ends up looking a little more uniform, just with a few different variations which come from that color that shines through underneath. Once that is done, we're going to go over with a black wash. Now you have to act quick with this. It's meant to just tone down the colors we're working with, so pretty soon after you've done it, just dab it off immediately. You really want the cracks to get all the black in it, but you don't necessarily want a whole amount of that black to stick around on the surface. So get it in the cracks and then dab it off. So once you've done that, you can see this really does look quite a bit more like stone. Compared to the original bit that we hadn't blackwashed. Now the next stage is a bit of fun because these are freshly cut stone. I wanted to add a bit of stone dust to them to make them look white and dusty, which is what the wagons look like as well. So we need to tie the weathering in for both of these. So here I've put some dust on whilst that blackwash is still wet, and it didn't quite stick the way I wanted to, so I've gone through with the second round using a makeup brush and getting some of that pastel off. I have brushed on the side. No, that is just like artist pastels, so it's nothing special here. And we don't need to coat this with anything else. The dust should stay on as long as you don't overhandle them. Now putting that into the wagon, that looks pretty nifty to me. I'd say it's a job well done. And here Mavis is to bring in all of the new stone-loaded wagons. You'll note the one different one at the front. It is actually a different wagon to the others, so I made its load look slightly different so that I didn't get them confused because the dimensions are a little bit different. Here comes Nelly, the steam quarry shunter, to take them away. Anyway, enjoy these videos with the loads in them.